It looks like U.S.-made M1 Abrams tanks are arriving in Ukraine ahead of schedule. I'm Dr. K. I'm a political scientist that looks at how information is shared, and we need a reminder of what these tanks can do and what they represent. And this is an example of how a backstory is important to understand new news. These tanks may be arriving in Ukraine now, but it took months to get them there. And when the U.S. finally said it would give the Abrams tanks in January, the move unlocked more equipment from European nations who seemed to be waiting for the U.S. to take the lead, thinking Western tanks might draw NATO more into the war and escalate tensions with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Once the U.S. said yes to sending its own tanks, German-made Leopard tanks, which Berlin had been saying nine to for a very long time, were sent on their way along with British Challenger 2 tanks, and those were delivered in the spring. The tanks were a big step in showing Western support for Ukraine and Western unity against the Russian invasion. Experts thought if the tanks reached Ukraine in early 2023, they could be used for a counteroffensive. And Germany and the UK did get their Leopards and Challengers on the battlefield. But the summer 2023 Ukrainian counteroffensive faced major challenges after Russia had months to build up its defenses in occupied Ukraine, attributable, according to more than one expert, in no small part to the delayed provision of Western military aid. Now, the Abrams are there, but they're complicated to maintain and repair. And while the Challengers and the Leos run on diesel, the Abrams tank has a jet engine that runs on jet fuel, and it burns almost 5 liters for every kilometer it moves, which means there has to be a constant supply of fuel trucks to stay within reach so it can keep moving forward, which is difficult, and it's heavy. It's really heavy. And Ukraine's topsoil, called the Chernozem or Black Earth, may be famously fertile, but it's also over 1.5 meters or 60 inches thick in some places, creating a pretty muddy affair for a tank that weighs more than 60 tons. With armchair generals calling the summer offensive officially over, what's the big deal about the U.S.-made tanks finally getting to Ukraine? These tanks are the kind of weapon needed to push through to the Sea of Azov and cut off the land bridge Russian forces have occupied connecting to Crimea. It's thought that about 6, maybe 8 Abrams were delivered in this first batch. And when Zelensky met with Biden in mid-September, he said the tanks and other things were exactly what our soldiers need now. And part of this, I think, is symbolic. It's nearly 600 days into a war that's full of new technology, but at the same time also looks a lot like World War I. Trench warfare is brutal, and the arrival of the U.S. tanks might help boost morale. And don't forget, Putin reportedly told his defense minister that he's got just 4 weeks to stop the counteroffensive. Russia has already denounced the arrival of the M1 tanks, saying that they would in no way affect the outcome of the war. Maybe the tanks aren't too late, though. Do you feel better informed? Let me know in the comments, and it would be a shame if we lost each other, so make sure you follow me in other places, too. I'm Dr. K.